The United States showed Putin real nuclear tests. In response to Putin's stories about Burevestnik and Poseidon, the United States unveiled a new nuclear stealth missile. Moreover, the United States also demonstratively rehearsed strikes with a nuclear bomber just 50 kilometers from the Russian border. The Americans proved to the Russians that nuclear escalation isn't worth challenging them over. An American B-52 strategic bomber practiced delivering nuclear strikes on targets at the Sotinpuro range, which is located near the Russian border in eastern Finland. And then the same plane entered Estonian airspace and approached the Russian border at a distance of about 50 kilometers. Well, and the nuclear stealth missile was shown sort of casually, but the Russians got the message. Today, Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov is already urging to resume talks between Washington and Moscow, warning that escalation could spiral out of control. My name is Alexei Pichi. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and write any detailed comment under this episode. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pichi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as it comes in. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation or a paid sponsorship subscription using the links and details provided. In the description of this video, it says support the channel Alexei Pichi. Choose any format that's convenient for you. Thank you for your support. So the United States of America has decided to respond on a large scale to the Russians' nuclear saber rattling. An American B-52 strategic bomber during a training flight over Finland practiced striking targets at the Sotinpuro range, which is located near the Russian border in the east of the country. This was officially reported by the Finnish Air Force. After that, the bomber entered Estonian airspace and approached the Russian border at a distance of about 50 kilometers. Moreover, in Finland, the American aircraft was escorted by Finnish FA-18 Hornet fighters, and in Estonia, by Royal Air Force Eurofighter Typhoons from the United Kingdom. Also, during the B-52 training flight, a NATO E-3, a Sentry airborne warning and control aircraft, was patrolling the skies over Estonia. Earlier, the United States Air Force Command in Europe reported that a group of B-52 strategic bombers had arrived at Moron Air Base in Spain to conduct multilateral exercises, together with, attention, Finland, Lithuania, Sweden, and other allies and partners. A total of 3 B-52 bombers were transferred to Spain from Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, and in the end, all of them, were terrifying the Russians. It was a direct hint, a very demonstrative exercise so that the Russians could see that, look, bombers can easily approach your borders. The American command noted that the B-52s would conduct a series of training flights simulating actions under high threat conditions. The flight paths make it clear who is seen as the threat. They also added that the deployment of forces and assets as part of multinational exercises allows the crews of United States Air Force strategic bombers to hone rapid response tactics and maintain a reliable deterrent capability. Along NATO's eastern flank and the far north, and that's not all, there's more. At the end of September, to strengthen NATO in the Baltic Sea, the United States deployed reconnaissance planes near Russia that can detect, destroy submarines and join operations against ships. At least 3 Boeing P-8 Poseidon aircraft were deployed at Norway's largest airport, Gardermoen, on September 28. According to flight radar, one of these aircraft took off over the Baltic Sea and spent several hours circling above the seawaters, not far from the Kaliningrad region, where one of the bases of the Russian Baltic fleet is located. The Norwegian Armed Forces Operations Headquarters said the aircraft's flight supported allies in the Baltic Sea. The recipient definitely got the message, but that's not all. No sooner had Vladimir Putin told the world about the successful tests of another wonder weapon than the United States demonstrated a missile developed as part of one of the most secret projects of the American nuclear weapons modernization program. The specialized portal Defense News calls this missile a leap into a new era of strategic nuclear deterrence. It is smaller in size, more stealthy, and much more lethal than its predecessor. Let me remind you that on October 26, Vladimir Putin announced the completion of decisive tests of the Burevestnik intercontinental cruise missile with a nuclear engine. And on October 29, he reported the successful launch of the Poseidon nuclear torpedo from a submarine. And here's something I've already talked about on my YouTube channel, but I'll repeat it since new details have emerged. On the same day, October 29, when Putin was boasting about the Poseidon in California, during the flight, a B-52 bomber was photographed, the same B-52, with an unusual weapon under its wing. Military experts identified it as the new nuclear stealth missile air-to-ground missile, 181 long-range standoff, images of which were published in June. And now, according to Defense News, this is the first public demonstration of the air-to-ground missile, 181 missile. The orange markings on the aircraft indicate that this was an official test flight, not a training flight. And notably, the American military wanted this missile to be, well, supposedly photographed by accident and shown to the public. They really wanted that. According to aviation photographer Ioan Reccio, who took the picture of this missile, the B-52 was first flying at a low altitude and then climbed higher. It climbed to an altitude of about 1.5 kilometers, which allowed observers to get a good look at its payload and take pictures. The fact that the new missile was shown right after Putin's statement is unlikely to be a mere coincidence. And here's what Defense News writes, quote, strategic analysts believe that the public display of the missile prototype was a carefully calculated signal, a subtle reminder that the United States is completing the modernization of its own nuclear triad. In a time of rising nuclear tensions, simply giving the world a chance to see such a weapon can be just as powerful as an official announcement about it. And JM-181 is a missile made with stealth technology, allowing it to avoid detection by enemy radars. It flies at subsonic speed, follows the terrain, which also helps it remain undetected, and carries a W-84 thermonuclear warhead with a yield of up to 150 kilotons in trinitrotoluene equivalent. The bomb dropped on Hiroshima had a yield of about 15 kilotons. With a range of over 2,400 kilometers, the new missile allows American bombers to strike from beyond the reach of even the most advanced air defense systems. This is a modern embodiment of reliable controlled deterrence, visible enough to send a signal and invisible enough not to be shot down. And what do you think the Russians do after all this? First of all, the Kremlin stopped shouting about Burevestnik and Poseidon. And today, Putin's press secretary, Dmitry Peskov, following Russia's foreign minister Lavrov, for some reason rushed to ask the White House to resume talks between Putin and Trump. He said, "We hope Trump still wants to talk to Putin." But I already talked about this in another episode, so go to the channel and watch it. I'll leave it at that here. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, Dimator Sok.